But there, just what did that moment mean to you?
It was pretty surreal. That's somebody who I've looked up to and has been my favorite player since I was really young.
Caitlin Clark, no problem, because in a performance that sent shockwaves across the WNBA landscape, the Indiana Fever didn't just beat the Las Vegas Aces, they obliterated them, silencing critics, skeptics, and doubters alike in a dominant, energetic, and fully cohesive team effort that demonstrated what can happen when an entire squad commits to execution, hustle, and belief in each other. Even without their rookie superstar on the floor, Aya Wilson, one of the league's most fearsome competitors, managed to put up nearly 30 points, showcasing once again why she's a perennial MVP candidate, yet it didn't matter in the slightest, as the Fever counterpunched every big bucket with a bigger response of their own, winning the game by nearly 30 points themselves in what can only be described as a complete basketball dismantling of the defending champions. With Caitlin Clark sitting out, many anticipated a flat offensive outing, but instead, what they got was a fiery offensive explosion anchored by Kelsey Mitchell, who scored a cool 25 points, not in a frantic, high-volume shooting spree, but with poised, calculated efficiency, knocking down shots only when they made sense, moving off the ball with precision, and making defenses pay, with her trademark quick-release jumper and fearless drives. And just as pivotal was Aaliyah Boston, a force of calm dominance in the paint, who registered 20 points and 7 rebounds while shooting nearly 70% from the floor, a stat line that becomes even more impressive when you consider the absence of Clark's passing, because without Caitlin's feeds and lob entries, Boston had to generate more of her own offense, battling for position, sealing defenders, and showing off her nimble footwork and soft touch around the rim. Meanwhile, Natasha Howard added another layer of front-court excellence, scoring consistently around the basket, flashing elite finishing ability, and providing physicality and veteran savvy that has clearly started to mesh with the team chemistry after a bumpy start to her season. Her defense was active, her cuts were timely, and she simply knew where to be, when to be there, and how to finish plays with strength. Yet for all the accolades the starters deserve, the engine behind this impressive performance may very well have been Ari McDonald, who in the absence of Caitlin Clark stepped into the primary playmaking role and flourished, finishing with 8 points, 7 assists, and 7 rebounds, an all-around performance that can't be captured by numbers alone, because what Ari brought was tempo, control, and decision-making under pressure, pushing the ball in transition, initiating the half-court, sets with urgency, and most importantly, getting everyone involved like a true floor general, proving she's not just a spark off the bench, but a reliable and dynamic backup point guard who can carry the load when called upon. Her pace, energy, and court vision were instrumental in creating the kind of open looks and fluid movement that allowed Indiana to dictate the flow from start to finish. And that tempo shift wasn't just an aesthetic flourish. It was strategic, allowing the Fever to run off of their defense, where they were simply suffocating. Lexi Hull, in particular, showed outstanding grit fighting over screens, denying touches, and staying glued to her defensive assignments, while the rest of the Fever locked in with collective effort, rotations, and communication that left Las Vegas scrambling to find open looks. One sequence, where they forced a shot clock violation with relentless ball pressure and tight help-side rotations, stood out as a microcosm of the effort. Indiana didn't just show up, they imposed their will. Defensively, they had a kind of hive-mind unity, everyone moving on a string, and what's more impressive is that it didn't come from a flashy scheme but pure effort and trust. Offensively, the absence of Caitlin Clark meant fewer half-court sets built around deep pick-and-rolls or off-ball gravity warping the defense, but what it did allow was more egalitarian ball movement, backdoor cuts, and synchronized motion off the ball, particularly in transition. And what do we always say about this team? When they get stops and push in transition, good things happen. And that's exactly what happened. Slashers filled the lanes, bigs rim ran with intent, and wings like Mitchell and Hull filled out to the corners, ready to punish late closeouts. The off-ball screening was crisper, the cuts were timed with purpose, and for once, the Fever didn't rely on one player to bail them out. They operated like a unit. Even without Clark's magnetic pull, the team created spacing through movement and activity, and in doing so, reminded the league that this team is deeper than the national headlines would suggest. This wasn't just a win, it was a culture win. It was a reminder that while Caitlin Clark elevates this team with her unique brilliance, this Fever squad is not helpless without her. They're adaptive, they're scrappy, and when they lock in, they can outwork even the most talented rosters in the league. For head coach Christy Sides, this performance must have felt like a validation of the foundational work she's been doing, instilling effort, defensive principles, and accountability, while developing her players' individual confidence. From Boston's emerging offensive assertiveness to Howard's two-way leadership, to McDonald's poise under pressure, the Indiana Fever didn't just beat the Aces. They sent a message that they are building something real, sustainable, and quietly dangerous. This game also calls into question the larger narrative surrounding the Fever as a one-woman show. While Clark undoubtedly transforms this team's ceiling, performances like these prove that the floor is rising as well. These young players are growing, learning, and when they are asked to step up, they answer the call. And make no mistake, this game was about stepping up. There was a visible hunger in the way the Fever defended, a chip on their shoulder in the way they closed out quarters, boxed out hard, and played through contact. That intensity reverberated from the starters to the bench and back again. Even players like Temi Fagbenell and Celeste Taylor, who didn't dominate the box score, contributed in their own roles, whether by defending, communicating, or just bringing the kind of energy that lifts teammates. The fact that Indiana built such a dominant lead against a team featuring Aya Wilson, Jackie Young, and Kelsey Plum is no small feat. It's a sign that the team's confidence is beginning to align with their potential. And while the national media's attention will inevitably swing back to Clark's return and her impact on the league's ratings and growth, those paying close attention will remember this game as a key pivot point in the Fever season. A turning point where they stopped waiting for their star to rescue them and instead took agency into their own hands. That's the sign of a maturing roster. This kind of win, team-oriented, gritty, and dominant, builds belief. And belief, more than talent, is what makes young teams dangerous in the second half of the season. The Fever may have started the year full of learning curves and hard lessons, but now, they're forging an identity, one built on pace, effort, togetherness, and increasingly, execution. With Clark watching from the sidelines, they proved they could deliver a knockout punch of their own. And if this is the kind of team Clark will return to, a confident, battle-tested group that knows how to win with or without her, then the rest of the league should be on notice, because the Indiana Fever aren't waiting for the future anymore. They're creating it right.
Makes you excited for the future and what it can continue to look like if we keep investing in women's sports, keep letting us play in platforms like this arena.
In a refreshing shift from their earlier season struggles, the Indiana Fever have begun to display a level of defensive intensity and consistency that has been sorely lacking throughout most of the year, and that change has started to reshape their identity as a team. Historically, one of the Fever's most glaring weaknesses has been their defensive apathy, a tendency to allow easy baskets, wide-open layups, and uncontested drives to the rim that left their interior exposed and the scoreboard bleeding. But in these past couple of games, something has changed, and it's not some complex strategic overhaul or a new defensive scheme, but rather a basic, foundational difference. They are simply trying. For once, they're fighting through screens, closing out shooters, denying penetration, and swarming opponents with energy, intention, and communication, and that effort has paid off. You can see it early in games now, where before they might sag off or play reactive defense. Against the Las Vegas Aces, for example, they refused to give any breathing room, pressuring ball handlers on the perimeter, showing help early, and forcing the offense to scramble. Lexi Hall was all over Jackie Young on one possession that ended in a desperate heave and a shot clock violation. Play emblematic of the kind of collective defensive effort fans have been begging to see for months. It wasn't about steals or blocks, but effort, positioning, and refusing to allow downhill attacks to even start. It's this kind of prevention, stopping penetration before it begins, that changes the game for Indiana. Because while they may lack elite size in the paint, the Fever can compensate by choking off access to the lane altogether. And that has made all the difference in recent wins, turning a team that used to be walked all over into one that fights on every possession, showing pride, grit, and discipline. Offensively, this renewed team effort has been anchored by none other than Kelsey Mitchell, whose play in this stretch has been nothing short of outstanding. Mitchell dropped 25 points in this game, but her value extended far beyond scoring. She also dished out 6 assists and controlled the tempo, reading the defense like a seasoned floor general. On one sequence, she came off a screen, drew 2 defenders, and calmly found Natasha Howard with a pocket pass for a clean layup at the rim. Plays like that are normally what we associate with Caitlin Clark's vision, but in this game, it was Mitchell doing the heavy lifting, stepping up as the offensive focal point, and excelling in that role. And speaking of Natasha Howard, her play has taken a turn for the better. Gone are the head-scratching, erratic plays, and forced shots. Now, she's finishing cleanly at the rim, catching on the roll, and laying it in with composure. Her pick-and-roll chemistry is growing, and when she keeps things simple, cut hard, finish strong, she's a reliable weapon in the half-court. This is the version of Natasha Howard that Indiana needs. Disciplined, efficient, physical, and opportunistic. Her resurgence is crucial, especially with teams focusing their attention on Clark and Mitchell, and if she maintains this form, the Fever can be far more dynamic than they've looked for most of the year. Meanwhile, Aaliyah Boston continues to expand her game and remind everyone why she was one of the most dominant collegiate players in recent memory. Early in the game, instead of waiting for post touches or drop-offs, she initiated offense off the dribble, driving into the paint and pulling up for a mid-range jumper, a subtle but significant shift. Boston is at her most dangerous when she embraces the full scope of her skill set, not just relying on post-ups but mixing in face-ups, mid-range shots, and pick-and-pops. Her footwork is polished, her shooting mechanics are sound, and when she's confident enough to use her full bag, she becomes nearly unguardable. But even more than the finesse, it's her physicality that stood out in this game. Time and time again, she bullied defenders down low, backing them down with sheer strength, creating space, and finishing with ease. Against Asia Wilson, arguably the best big in the WNBA, Boston didn't shy away. She embraced the contact, put her shoulder down, and scored over her like a veteran. And that's what's been missing from her game at times this season. The willingness to dominate physically. As the broadcaster noted, "You're a polar bear. Use your size." And when Boston embraces that identity, good things follow. She's too strong, too big, and too skilled to play small, and when she combines strength with skill, she commands double teams and shifts the geometry of the entire offense. Lexi Hull also deserves credit not just for her perimeter defense, but for the way she's anchored the interior on switches. On one play, she held her ground against a bigger player in the post. No fouling, no reaching, just textbook verticality, and forced a toughness. Those kinds of plays don't show up in the box score, but they're the backbone of a winning defense. Even the little things, helping early, boxing out, recovering after switches, have all improved. And while the team's offense still flows through Caitlin Clark, it's become more balanced. In this game, Clark wasn't the only playmaker. Mitchell took over large stretches, and her off-ball movement was a thing of beauty. She ran through screens, popped out to the wing, caught a clean pass, and drained a 3, exactly the kind of shot she excels at. Mitchell is best when she doesn't have to dribble too much. Quick trigger, one dribble pull-ups, curling off screens, and the Fever are finally putting her in those spots. She got up 19 shots in this game, and that aggression is critical for Indiana's success. For too long, Mitchell has been in a slump, but now she's in rhythm, confident, and shooting with purpose. She's re-established herself as not just a scoring guard, but a foundational piece of this team's identity, and she looks every bit the all-star starter that her talent suggests she should be. What's also impressive is how Mitchell mixed it up by getting into the paint.